Hi everyone. I'd like to talk to you today about a very, special, intimate little film. One about, the pleasures of childhood, one that can only be, captured by the most sensitive of artists. Because childhood is universal. We've all had a childhood. We all know what it is like to be a child, and we can only forget. So there are very few directors out in the world can actually match Steven Spielberg with his collective body of work, which is very much about the wonderment of childhood. Like the signature Spielberg shot is, looking up in amazement. And so Ready Player One, it's his Tempest, it's his Ron. It's him looking back on a long career and trying to make sense of his place in the history of art, in the history of the sense of childhood that he has built for an entire generation.
Is that what he's doing with Ready Player One?
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination.
Hi, I'm Kyle Calgren.
I'm Jordane Searles.
Welcome to Now Playing. We saw Ready Player One a couple days ago, and we've been sitting on it for a while now. There's a lot to take in.
I don't know if there is. I think the longer that we waited to do this, the more of the movie just fluttered away from my brain. I'm trying to grab it. I think an important thing to say about Ready Player One is that I did not read the book. And most of Spielberg's most iconic films about childhood, I did not see until I was an adult.
Yeah.
One of the first Spielberg movies I ever saw, I'm pretty sure, was The Color Purple. So, that's where I'm coming from. I didn't see Jaws until 2016, I believe. I didn't see E.T. until I was in college. I cried, of course, but I didn't see it until I was in college. Didn't see Jurassic Park until a few months ago with you. So I just don't...
my Bible, that was my kid Bible. I was totally a dinosaur kid. And a dinosaur makes a cameo in this movie. I'm pretty sure it's the same model that they've had on a hard drive since 1994, just with, new textures and shaders. There has been so much online discourse about this movie and its legacy, the legacy that not only the movie, but the book has, just how far away 2011 was when the book was published.
Oh yeah, that was a whole different time.
Yeah, where nerddom was this innocent thing. It was this fantasy land.
Or at least it was perceived to be as innocent. I don't think it was innocent then either.
Very true, but that's before we pulled the lid off, took away the...
Yeah.
And actually looked at the other users and how they behaved and demystified it.
One thing about this film that I want to say is that, there's been a lot of to-do about the references.
Yeah.
No, thank you, honey. People have been talking about, Easter eggs and, we saw this and this and this and that and all of those things.
And the movie itself is about a quest for an Easter egg. It's a celebration of the amount of, references that you can get.
The thing about Easter eggs, though, and I guess I'm gonna have to make reference to my shirt in a second as I talk about Easter eggs.
Actually, I should talk about this shirt too. But...
I am visually impaired, right? So I'm nearsighted in my right eye and I'm blind in my left eye. So actually, it's a really interesting being a movie critic in that, because it means that I basically have to work extra hard to see things, and especially seeing things with subtitles and stuff. It's like I'm working. It's harder for me to consume certain media, and I do it. It just takes me more time, and I need more patience, and I need visual tools and aids. A lot of the Easter eggs and visual gags and things in Ready Player One, because a lot of them aren't drawn attention to, I don't notice them and I cannot see them because the film does not call attention to them. So therefore I do not notice them, because for a person that can't see well, if I'm watching a film, I'm trying to pay attention to so many things, and I try to keep the focus on the characters and the action. So if there's stuff going on in the frame that's no one's talking about, it's hard for me to notice it. It's hard for me to know to notice it. So the Easter eggs didn't really help. And so, like, if you take, like, something like Scott Pilgrim, which I did, like, around that time Scott Pilgrim came out in 2010, so that was kind of, like, that was my kind of, like, big nerd thing. The thing about the video game stuff and all of the visual stuff in Scott Pilgrim is that it's less important. It's an aesthetic choice, and it's not necessarily a function of the plot. So it's easier to ignore, and you don't feel like you miss anything. Like, if you catch it, it's fine. And also, if you look at I had a chance to read the book before I saw it, so, like, a lot of those visual gags are in the book. So I got to see them close up before I saw them in the film.
I'm gonna grab something. Hold on. What should I pick? What should I pick? Oh, so I've been rereading this recently. Because I've actually been a fan of this comic series for a really long time, and, like, an embarrassingly huge fan, like, write fanfic about it fan, and I never really talked about that. And there's the fourth and final volume is coming out this year, so I've been rereading this. See? The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, to me, it's a comment upon the way comic books are written itself, because when a writer is asked to come work for a comic book company, they have to know the backstories and intercontinuities of all these various characters that company owns. And if they make a mistake, they have editors have them work around it. So if you were to say, write for Ms. Marvel, you would have to get a crash course in what the X-Men are doing, what the Avengers are doing at that point, before you can even, like, take any sort of legal control over this character that they own. And that kind of continuity porn is kind of intrinsic to how comic books are told. And comic books as a medium can only get away with that because you can just land on a page and scan it and look for all the references.
Yeah,
You can actually pause this video and look at this page.
Yeah, being able to scan a page is so, like, it works so great for visual references. It helps with, like, comic books, manga, and all of those things. It's much harder to do it with a visual medium, and I found myself asking, a visual movement medium, as in motion pictures.
Yeah.
I found myself asking, what's the point the whole time during Ready Player One? And I just don't think that the film really justifies it.
The point is that this is a movie not to be watched in a theater. This is a movie to be paused and scanned. So you can point out all the lore references and callbacks that are worked into the background of every frame by the CGI team, who are essentially like comic book artists are drawing a frame more than shooting it, more than filming it. Actually, I'm pretty sure a lot of the background extras, I'm pretty sure those are just assets that ILM had lying around that they knew they could fill in at a moment's notice. So they could work in the Ninja Turtles, but like the new CGI Ninja Turtles.
I didn't even see the Ninja Turtles.
Did.
People pointed out stuff in it that, like, I didn't even see. Like, apparently Hello Kitty was in there.
Hello Kitty, some character from Overwatch. I noticed a bunch of characters from the Batman Arkham games. And I'm pretty sure they only were included because they were easy to buy, because you had all these major video game companies willing to license out this movie for essentially a background asset for scenery.
Everything was so, like, gray and kind of, like, damp looking. Like, the one thing that I remember, well, because they called attention to it, is Chucky. And Chucky looked like Chucky. And I was just like, okay, I see Chucky. I understand. I'm with you.
Would you have enjoyed it more if you got more of the references?
No, because the references don't really do anything for the plot. You see, the plot is about, I guess everybody knows at this point, but for the purposes of this, it's about a guy who is poor, and he's living with his parents are dead, of course. He's living with his aunt, and his aunt has a bunch of, like,
they're all bedridden and sipping cabbage soup.
And, like,
but he's got a golden ticket.
He's got a golden ticket.
It was worked into the marketing for the movie. They all knew this. They would make that reference.
Come with me.
It's just, like, very much like he's living in poverty.
Wonka face.
So it's just like this kid, and like it seems like everyone around him is like living in poverty, and they all have this game. You know, that's actually one of the most interesting parts about Ready Player One is the economic stuff that the movie does not seem interested in at all.
Nor the book.
Such an interesting thing, and it's like...
They actually take a beat in the movie to talk about it, like one beat. The scene between him and his mom and his dad, who it's like a lottery ticket.
His mom's boy,
You're right, the stepdad.
His aunt's boyfriend.
Right, the Uncle Ben. There's obviously so much that has gone on outside of the Oasis that has, you know, affected the world to the point where we have shanty towns made of discarded trailers, and these kids are fighting for their right to live in a fantasy land while the floods come.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, no one, it's weird, because it seems like everyone's struggling, but no one seems to want to get out, except for his aunt, who's just like, hey, I'm trying to, like, she's trying to save up money for a house, and then the boyfriend, like, squanders it on some kind of, like, bet for a game or something, and she's just like, life, basically, is like, life isn't a game,
it's like,
I was gonna buy a fucking house,
okay,
like, what the fuck?
The part of me that actually played MMORPGs in high school got really mad at that. So, the game that they're playing is that if your character dies in game, you lose all of your actual money. This is basically a casino.
Yeah, it's like...
The world is being run by a casino.
You know, sometimes I play phone games and they'll be like, okay, you can unlock these premium features if you put in money, and I'll be like, no, I just want to play the game for free, and so like I'll like miss things, and it's perfectly fine. But it's weird that like it's required to put your money into it, and that your money could so easily be taken by someone else's reckless actions.
There are going to be like thousands of comments about actual esports for that. I'm sure that happens.
Because like it's just...
Because online gambling has been a thing since there wasn't online.
There's this big game company and this guy named Holiday and his partner.
Yeah. The Jobs and Wozniak of the group.
Essentially, yes. Their disagreement seems to be about the fact that like Simon Pegg is just like, hey dude, this is getting kind of out of hand. We should do some regulations. And Holiday's like, no, man. We don't need regulations, man.
That's an excellent Mark Rylance impression.
So this Holiday dude is...
Halliday.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Just tweet me all the correct pronunciations.
I'm sorry. I was acting like a character in this movie.
And
it was a reference.
So Homeboy just does this whole thing, and he like never falls in love, and the woman that he loved married Simon Pegg, whose character name I should really know. What is Simon Pegg's character's name? Moreau. Ogden Moreau. So all of these things happen, and it's just, you know, a big like, you know, Google, Apple, games, blah, blah, blah thing.
Not your thing?
Can you tell?
Google Apple Games.
Google Apple Games.
So basically,
beep, beep, boop.
A video game millionaire named Halliday, who's basically like the Notch or Will Wright or Sid Meier or Lord British of the future, disappears so far up into his own butt.
Yeah, just goes right up his own ass.
And just, you know, becomes one with himself. This Ouroboros of nerdery, which is this game that he has created. And
basically merges with the game, which is...
He uploads himself to the cloud as a final act.
He uploads himself to the cloud!
As his final reference.
Oh my God.
As his final referential joke. I refer to myself.
This man... I don't know if you can tell that I can't stand him.
I'm pretty sure the movie invented the entire backstory of him, like, regretting who he didn't date, and...
Yes, yeah. I do. I'm
pretty sure that was all Spielberg.
I think so too.
That was all written by a person who had lived a full life.
I don't know if I'm a real nerd girl, or if I'm just a fake nerd girl, or like whatever anybody's gonna call me. I don't fucking know.
We're all fake nerds.
Here's my thing. Undergrad, all of my dude friends were programmers. They were dudes like this. Everyone that I dealt with, a lot of people that I've slept with.
I'm pretty sure you can curse in this vlog. I won't censor you.
And I grew up to despise these guys. And it's just because of this, like, weird, like, I'm a nice guy, I just don't understand people passive attitude, and I'm just a girl's mouth, I don't understand. Kira, this woman wanted to go dancing. This man, Halliday, took her to see The Shining. Honey, baby.
Backing up.
If Halliday had just had one female friend, if I would have been like, boy, if you do not take this woman dancing, it does not matter if you just stand there like a plank. She will like you better if you take her dancing. What was this nonsense?
Okay, this was that nonsense. Let me back it up.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the entire side plot into The Shining.
Yeah,
into
they
the
go
Overlook
into
Hotel,
The Shining in this movie.
that was not in the book. That was something added by Spielberg's team. It was basically allowing Spielberg to do this really long homage to a filmmaker that he knew and respected.
Yeah, instead of War Games, which is what the big homage is in the book, is like War Games, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's War Games. It's really interesting that it's...
But I don't think they actually go into War Games. The plot is just go recite War Games, the entire
But I think you have to be the character in War Games. I think that's what our roommate told us, that you have to be Matthew Broderick in War Games. But anyway,
I was just fascinated by that because it meant Spielberg was,
being
Kubrick
he's
again.
being a Kubrick stan again. But you know what? And the thing is that I love Spielberg as a Kubrick stan. AI is the one that I have the most nostalgia for. Really? And yes, and AI is the one that I write for. Like, I'm a big AI apologist. Man, he had more to say in AI than he does in this Shining thing, because it's just like, I should have taken a girl to dance. But
instead I took her to The Shining.
I remember I went on a date with a guy, and he it basically took me to his apartment to watch Ghostbusters. And like, I'm in his apartment and there are action figures everywhere in display cases.
Ghostbusters is not a great date movie.
And I'd never seen Ghostbusters, and he's watching me watch Ghostbusters. His eyes are like glued to my head. I feel like that was Kira's experience watching The Shining with Halliday. Like, girl.
To be fair, is now a good time to mention that that's a total me move? I mean, I felt that way when I showed you Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were definitely like that when we watched Jurassic Park.
Because it's childhood. Because it's, something very, very private that you've held on to for literally your entire life, and sharing that is a big part of, seeing whether or not you two are compatible.
Yeah.
I get the impulse, but still, there are better movies to pick than The fucking Shining.
Yeah.
As a first date movie.
The thing about it is that if she wanted to go dancing and you took her to The Shining and then nothing ended up happening, like, two things should have happened. You should have either gotten over her and found somebody who would think that The Shining as a first date movie would be a good idea, because there are plenty of women who would feel that way.
Yeah. But if he already says, I want to go dancing.
But yeah, or you should just be
I'm actually curious,
okay,
what movie would you pick? What movie would you pick in that situation? If you were going to date someone that wanted to go dancing, but you wanted to stand and watch a movie, what movie then?
I don't know. My old, the movie that I used to, make dates watch was True Romance, but that's not the movie that I pick anymore.
Good. I really didn't like True Romance. I didn't grow up with it.
He didn't like True Romance. I did grow up with True Romance.
The entire grapefruit, or what is it? Eggplant, that was it. The entire fucking eggplant.
Yeah,
speech.
grapefruit was Girls Trip, and you liked Girls Trip.
How did I miss that?
I don't know, but just for the record, Kyle likes Girls Trip. He had a great time. He was laughing the entire time, didn't you?
It's just fun.
Yes.
It's about the search for happiness, and I can't fault it. And let them fucking have fun. And
yeah, I don't know what the movie would be now. I don't really believe in those litmus tests anymore, and also we've been together for a while, so I don't really think about these things anymore.
Yeah.
And this isn't me saying that Halliday is the worst person ever because he didn't show one girl a good time, but just the fact that
despite despite all the time that we've just spent implying exactly that.
He personifies just like a kind of passive nerd dude who like a lot of other nerd dudes relate to because they're also passive and scared. But to have a whole movie idolizing a person who really, like, aside from creating a game, which I mean is a big achievement, never really did anything else with his life is just so depressing to me. I was so depressed, and whenever anybody was just like, Halliday, whenever Ty Sheridan was just like freaking out over Halliday, I was just like, boy, like this is not the dude that you want to be. This is not a cool dude.
Yeah.
It's not a cool dude.
Yeah.
Are you okay? You're getting emotional.
A little bit. Because I totally related to the kid that Halliday is. I don't relate to the old man that Halliday is, but I totally relate to the kid that he is. A large part of that is Mark Rylance's performance, which is great. I mean, he's wonderful in it, and he does show just how sad a life that is.
He really does encapsulate this kind of dude.
The big thing that Spielberg brings to it, like the backstory that he and Mark Rylance clearly wrote, that this is what, their third movie? Fourth?
I don't know.
They've worked together a lot, and I just wonder if this was just something built between the two of them, like at some point during the screenwriting process. I mean, they didn't write the script. It was Zach Penn and who was it?
It was Zach Penn and the writer of the book, Ernest Cline. They wrote it together.
Oh, well.
It's really interesting that
Ernest Cline. Okay.
Ernest Cline signed off on the changes that were made to his book, which is really interesting.
One thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and not just about Ready Player One and the culture that it represents, and the culture, which is a culture that I grew up with.
Yeah.
I was raised by nerds. I did grow up with Spielberg and Star Trek and every other billion things.
And I was not raised by nerds. I was raised by people who were just like confused by me.
And that generation took over Hollywood and are now producing the movies that a new generation is following. And I really was only half joking with that entire intro that I gave Steven Spielberg, but I stand by it. In fact, Mark Cousins, writer for Sight and Sound, who, if you haven't seen his A Story of Film, it's brilliant. He also did a feature-length documentary called The Story of Children and Film. He goes through world cinema and picks out films starring children. There were films from like Iran and Japan. I think Yasujiro Ozu was among them. And Steven Spielberg. E.T. was mentioned in it. in a positive light. And
E.T. is like a beautiful movie.
It is. And Mark Cousins had a beautiful phrase when he talked about the relationship between E.T. and Elliot. They're both new in the world. And that's why there are so many children's stories about their pets, or about something their age, about newcomers, because they are also newcomers. They are also learning about the world. Spielberg has built an entire career out of the act of nostalgia itself. And as he's gotten older, he's actively questioned that. It's easy to forget just how new he is, how new he once was, and how different, how much he changed film culture as a whole, to the point where we don't remember that this isn't normal?
Yeah, I mean, he gave us the summer blockbuster.
Yeah, and
It's him.
Or when I say normal, I mean it's not permanent. That childhood will change, that our memories will change as generations change. That Elliot meeting E.T. as an adult would be a very, very different film. That's a very different film watching Jurassic Park from whether you relate to the kids in it or to Sattler and Grant.
Yeah.
And a lot of criticism about Spielberg has come from his inability to let go of that, father-child relationship, which he has built up so much throughout his life. I mean, absent fathers are a common theme in his work.
In which I'm pretty sure he, high watermark for that, in my opinion, is Catch Me If You Can. So, So it's almost just like revisiting after Catch Me If You Can is kind of like, it's going to be diminishing returns after that, I think.
Yeah. But for me, having Spielberg himself direct this film, it's like he's acknowledging his own complicitness in the culture that he created. I mean, he, along with that entire generation of people that he's worked with and referenced in this film, they shaped a generation.
And it doesn't seem that positive about it either.
No.
You know?
Because it's fear. It's a film, it's a culture. It's a culture based on fear. I'm afraid to go out into the world, so I will have my fantasy in here. I'm afraid to display who I really am, so I will make a persona for myself. I am afraid to face the fact that the world is dying, so I will escape.
And the bad guy, played by Ben Mendelsohn, he runs like a rival gaming company, and it's like evil. It basically like uses loyalty centers to enslave people, and the movie doesn't really dig into that as much as possible. But
so they can work off their debt incurred by.
That's very like Repo the Genetic Opera. But anyway,
I'm pretty sure that's actually how mobs work.
He and the interesting thing about him is that like he's a bad guy because he's in it for not just because he's in it for the money, but because he's not a nerd like everyone else. Like if you see the scenes where he's like Halliday's intern, he's just like he's talking to Halliday about like profits and money and stuff, and Halliday's just looking at him just like, good cup of coffee, which was actually hilarious. But yeah, it's because he's into money and because he's not like a real nerd. Like there's a scene where like Ty Sheridan's character, what is Ty Sheridan's character's name?
WW something.
Oh yeah, Wade Watts. Wade tries to trick him, but because it's just like, they're talking about John Hughes movies, and then Wade's just like, oh yeah, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and then like one of the intel guys in Ben Mendelsohn's ears, like he's trying to trick you, Fast Times is not a John Hughes movie.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's one specific part of nerd culture. I mean, there are a few, but there's one specific part of nerd culture that Kyle has absolutely no part of and did not grow up with that I actually did, that was referenced in this movie, and that's being a John Hughes stan. Now, let me say this one thing here.
Go ahead.
This worship of John Hughes, this is coming from a stan. It has to stop.
Thank you.
It has to stop. We need to start being critical about this. This is just too much. Like, it's like using Fast Times as like
Fast Times, that fun romp about a teenage abortion.
That Fast Times
about sexual assault and crippling mental
Fast
anxiety.
Times, a movie that is like.
Okay, speaking of Fast Times, that's another film that is supposed to be paused and scanned.
Really, you think so?
That one scene.
Well, I mean,
that's the reason the movie got popular. It's because of that's the only way that people talk about it. I'm not saying it's right for them to talk about it. I'm saying that's how we've perceived it for long, because we haven't watched the whole film, because they fast forward through it. Because
that's an Amy Heckerling joint, by the way.
Directed by a woman, and it's easily one of it's shocking how honest it is in the way it depicts. I mean, you would have more to say about it than I would.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely for another vlog, hopefully.
And we only think about it because we can pause it.
Yeah, we need to start actually like deconstructing some of the issues with John Hughes, finally. Like, the way that people obsess over him is really strange, especially considering that, like, later in life, before he died, he just wanted to be left alone. So it's just weird to... This whole, like, thing about, like, idolizing these men, it's just toxic, and it's just, like, bad. And, like, as a John Hughes fan in the theater, I, like, covered my face because I was embarrassed. Kyle has disliked almost every John Hughes movie I've showed him. Kyle does not like John Hughes.
There's just so much in those films that people just don't talk about because it's too goddamn fucking embarrassing.
Yeah.
That we've rightly forgotten as a culture, but we really should not.
Yeah, it's very telling that I had to that my older boyfriend had to be like, hey, did you know that John Hughes is kind of sexist? It never occurred.
Kinda.
It never occurred to me.
Yeah.
until you mentioned it, and then I felt terrible because like once you know, you can't like. I still love weird science, but now it's like I love it from a distance.
It's about kids who 3D print a hooker. Who just happens to be smarter than they are.
Okay, so we should talk about women for a second. Okay, so,
Oh yes, let's.
So Wade's love interest, Samantha Cook, is in many respects should be the protagonist of the story, and it's very much like a Lego Movie Wild style situation.
Yep.
Where
or Trinity, or who else? What other things can we reference in this movie about references?
Scott Pilgrim versus the World. What if Scott Pilgrim versus the World was about Ramona?
Yeah.
Since it's her psyche that we're exploring in the first place.
She's the one with the grudge. She's the one who has every reason to hate the company. And she should be the one to have that vengeance. It's very interesting. And also, I was told by our roommate that the scar is a way bigger deal in the book. But you know, of course, if we were gonna have the pretty girl from Thoroughbreds and me and Earl and the dying girl, you're not gonna want to cover up her face. It's like a little. It's like a boo boo. It's like remember when we watched Beastly? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like she's still hot.
Like a bad production of Phantom of the Opera that didn't want to dirty up his face too much.
Yeah, she's the most compelling character. She's the most active character. She's the most interesting character. And all she gets in the end is like kidnapped, has to get saved, and like a chair kiss. She shows up like Denzel Washington's wife at the end of Inside Man. Like, I don't know if Kyle's seen Inside Man. Okay, so Inside Man starts with like Denzel Washington like with his wife, and they're having like a hot sexy scene, and then he goes to work, and then the whole movie happens, and then at the end of Inside Man he comes back home, and it's like his girl is like exactly where he left her in the bedroom. That is kind of like what the ending of Ready Player One feels like. It's very much like she was just like that chair
just there waiting for him to bed at the end of his long adventure. But she was in the adventure, god damn it! Like Odysseus coming home to his wife.
Oh yeah, man, yeah.
Who just sat there waiting faithfully for him, fending off suitors and knitting.
It's
which itself is, pretty sad.
It's real strange. It's like Rosie Perez just chilling in the apartment and do the right thing.
Another 80s reference. You're getting into the spirit of the movie.
I like Olivia Cooke a lot. I do not like Thoroughbreds, but I like Olivia Cooke a lot, and I liked her in this movie, and I wish that it was about her. And I like Ty Sheridan. It's not even that, forget Ty Sheridan. He's a very sweet, he's a very adorable presence. It's just not compelling.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people actually knew that Lena Waithe was in this movie. I know our roommate didn't, and I know that it was a surprise to other people. I knew that she was in it. That's actually part of the reason why I wanted to watch it, because I wanted to see Lena Waithe in a big budget movie. I had
no idea who Lena Waithe was, which says a lot about...
Lena Waithe, if you don't know who she is, she was just on the cover of Vanity Fair, so definitely pick that up. There's a picture in it of her and her girlfriend or fiance, I'm not sure, but anyway, it was fucking cute.
Feature me, put that here.
She is in the best, and I say it's the best episode of Master of None because it's the only one that I've watched all the way through. The Thanksgiving episode, which is the one where it shows her going to Thanksgiving over the decades and eventually coming out to her mom, who's played by Angela Bassett. And it's a really beautiful episode that makes me cry, and I love it. Lena Waithe is also the creator of the new Showtime show, The Chi. She is also, I think, one of the first Black women to win an Emmy for writing a comedy for that episode of Master of None. So Lena Waithe is a really, really big deal right now. She's like a queer Black woman writer and actress that's really out there, and she's just like really hot, and I'm a fan.
Okay,
and now I'm standing. But
Yes, you've been standing for a while.
so she's in this film, and I knew that H was her, like, I didn't even know which character she was playing, but the moment that I heard the voice distortion of H, I was like, that's her.
the orc.
I was like,
or whatever it was.
I was like, that's her.
So, okay, she's a queer black woman, and she's the sidekick who's disguised as an orc, a male orc.
Yes.
So.
So it is so interesting when they meet, because when she meets, Samantha goes by Artemis, by the way, and this, like, Wade's character is Parsifal.
The knight who found the Holy Grail.
Right.
Which they comment on in the movie, because of course they would.
When Parsifal and Artemis, when they meet H, it's so strange because she just seems like she's prepared for them to be disappointed that she's a black woman. And I don't know if the movie gives enough time into that. It's so strange because, like, this is a movie that doesn't really talk about race at all, and then we just have
except for the awkward pause.
Except for when they first find out. Man, when she meets Artemis, the pause is gigantic. I could feel it. And she just, like
it's almost as big as the whole gag with the 11-year-old kid. Like, everyone makes a big deal about me being 11.
Oh, yeah, the little boy. Hero?
Maybe. I forget. I thought more about the themes and...
it's kind of hard
It's kind of
hard to keep track of everyone's names because they don't really matter that much.
Like being on the internet.
In this movie. But it seems like she's prepared for people to be disappointed that she's a black woman. It seems like she's scared of people knowing that.
Yeah. What does that imply about the world that they live in?
Yeah. Okay, I can have the anonymity. I can blend in the way, I can be the default, like, whiteness, kind of, like, I can move in these spaces without it being called attention to who I am, my blackness, my womanness, my queerness.
That is a major facet of, like, Chan culture. My colleague, Dan Olson, Foldable Human, he once made a great and controversial video about Gamergate at its height, and the culture that grew from it. And a big part of that is the idea that identity politics were meaningless on the internet, that everyone was anonymous, that everyone was just another user, and that anyone, therefore, trying to bring in things like their experiences with race or gender or sexuality or anything was disruptive. It placed you. It made you a finite, essentially. It made you into a user.
I mean, and that's
why.
That's also why a lot of people on the internet think that they're not racist, because they just don't want to talk about it. They think that that's the same thing, and it's like.
But it's only commented upon if that experience is not male, straight, white. And it's part of an ingrained, unspoken thing within Chan culture, and it was uncommented on in 2011 when the book was written.
Yeah.
But Gamergate 3 years later just weaponized that and used that to attack anyone talking about identity politics, regardless of their...
Well, identity, period.
Yeah, identity. Yeah, identity politics has, like, connotations, but it was a way to silence people who weren't white dudes.
And I mean...
And I think I can say that now without getting harassed by a legion of people. I mean, right?
If someone thinks that you're a white dude online, you're more likely to be left alone, and that's just facts. And, like, that's still facts. Like, no matter, like, what people say, if you are a straight white dude online, and, like, if you are, you're more likely to be able to move freer on the internet, and that's just the truth.
It's definitely the truth, but also, for me, as a white guy online, the only time that, I really, like, get nasty comments, like, the worst comments I get are from videos or posts where I talk about racism or sexism or anything like that. Not even just acknowledging that those forces exist and that I am a part of that society and therefore have privileges and benefit from it. That honest discussion of it is forbidden. And that's the only time I ever get harassed.
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about me being harassed on the internet because we'd be here all day.
Yeah, it's the same approach to people as it is to art, essentially, that's displayed in this movie. Going around collecting things, like just seeing how many references you get. It's a deeply ingrained nerd culture thing. It's an academic thing. Gilbert and Sullivan, modern Major General. You know it?
No.
I am the very model of a modern Major General. I've information vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England and I quote the facts historical, from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. It's a very famous operetta. You probably know it. You've probably seen it referenced in... Why am I...
Probably like Animaniacs.
Yeah, definitely Animaniacs. I'm mansplaining Gilbert and Sullivan. I shouldn't.
You're not mansplaining it because I do not know, and so it's fine.
Well, anyway, the joke of it, and the reason I brought it up, this Major General is very well learned, and he knows all these things. He knows calculus and natural history, and then he admits at the end of the song, I have no idea how to win a battle, though. And I am the very model of a modern Major General. The accumulation of useless knowledge with no ability to connect it and apply it.
Right, yeah, it's because the thing about Ready Player One is that it's about knowing stuff about media. It's not about knowing the themes of media. Mm-hmm. I had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine before the film came out, and she basically said, I've never been interested in Ready Player One, and I don't like it when people call it fan fiction, because fan fiction is actually, exploring the themes of the art by inserting yourself in it. By inserting yourself, you're exploring the themes with you as the character, which means that you're
seeing how you interact
with the story and what the story is trying to do, whereas this kind of like data collection is not fan fiction. It's just,
I still say this is one of the most interesting deconstructions of that whole fanfic ideal and these warring sides between nerd culture, between collection and interpretation.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think I'm more on her side in terms of, what she said, because, I wrote fan fiction. And I, through writing fan fiction, I became a storyteller. I never was the let's collect references thing. Like, aside from maybe the View Askew universe, that's really the only universe that I really engaged with. And even then, I was still just when I would think about, okay, Jane Silent Bob knew this person and T.S. Quentin Brody know who, I was still thinking, okay, well, what were their relationships like with each other? It was hard for me to engage with a lot of this film.
Yeah.
Honestly, for that reason, because he's using the information that he knows. He keeps on going into this big library of information, and he's using it to get the keys so that he can get the Easter egg so that he can own Oasis, or make sure that Ben Mendelsohn doesn't own Oasis. But nothing about his journey informs him as a human being, and he doesn't. He grows a little bit, but he could grow so much more in a journey of this size.
But it's not about growing.
It's not.
It's about leveling up.
And that's really what it is. And there were points in this movie where I just bent over and just put my head between my knees, because I was just there's just nothing happening on screen that is telling me anything about these characters, and there was nothing to hold on to. I've
been getting a handful of comments on my video that I did about Buckaroo Banzai, because there was a moment where the main character dresses like Buckaroo Banzai, which I actually thought was kind of brilliant, because Buckaroo Banzai, as I explained in my video, is very much about referencing without interpreting. It is about building this character from whole cloth out of references to other things that we'll just explain later.
Yeah, and like for me, like I watched Buckaroo Banzai with him, and I was there when he was making the video for Buckaroo Banzai. But when I saw the suit, until they said that it was a Buckaroo Banzai suit, it just looked like a fucking suit.
Yeah, it's a suit with a shirt under it and a loose tie.
Yeah,
and like it only registers as Buckaroo Banzai if like you zoom in and see the Team Banzai label on it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think Buckaroo Banzai, I think Peter Weller circa 1983 in that suit. He's not the suit to me, he is the actor.
Right. We're not going to really talk about this character because it doesn't really matter, but for the record, TJ Miller sucks.
Yes, he does. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, Logorama.
Good morning, life.
There's a film that came out around the same time, actually before Ready Player One, called Logorama. It's a computer animated short that was nominated for Best Animated Short the year it came out. And it's this crime movie, essentially, about a robber who was Ronald McDonald, two cops who are the Michelin Man, and everything in the movie, everything, human, animal, vegetable, mineral, chemical, is a logo. It is a world made up entirely out of logos, like down to galaxies. The galaxy is actually just the Milky Way logo. It is a universe made out of symbols for other things. And I've been reading a book.
So many props. Prop king.
I'm also referencing things, but I'm referencing things that are about references to other things. See, Ernest Cline? This is how you do it. So I've been started reading Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities, which you probably can't read because it's just a white, yeah, fuck it. One of the cities he mentions is a city made up entirely of signs. You know, signs for places to work, places to sleep, places to buy things, but the places themselves are not actually there. Honestly, to give this movie credit, I appreciate Spielberg even attempting to find, you know, some element of regret and pathos and humanity in that sad existence of living in a world made up entirely of signs, because that is the world that we live in. I mean, watching this movie is no different from scrolling through your Twitter feed and looking at GIFs from movies that people have captured and used to express themselves.
Or walking around in Times Square.
Or walking around in Times Square. Browsing any given web page with advertisements. It's just how we experience the world now.
Which sucks, man. And you know, it's weird because, like, essentially
we are all player one.
It's like they're fighting for the right to continue to live in a fantasy land, but, like, with less restrictions, instead of actually fighting to make their actual lives better.
Mm-hmm. Because they know they're not going to be saved in the real world. Because why bother? Fuck this movie! Fuck this movie! Fuck this fucking movie!
So depressing. That's so, wow. I'm so bummed.
Good!
That's such
you
a
should
bummer.
be!
Yeah, this was a very, like, nothing burger of a movie for me. I just didn't get...
It's a nothing burger of a life, man!
People liked this movie, but they didn't like A Wrinkle in Time. All right, America.
Go see A Wrinkle in Time.
All right, America. You know, you made your choice. You make your choices at the box office every day. I don't know, man. Like, do what you gotta do, but I don't get it. Like, you do you. You do you. Enjoy this movie if you want. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see it for this movie. And I honestly hope that everyone in it goes on to better things and does better. Actually, I mean, everybody in it has done better things than this. Like, they'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the little boy goes on to better things. This might be his first thing. I don't know.
Any last thoughts?
Go to therapy. Talk to people about your feelings. Figure yourself out.
Did you notice the Battletoads in the movie? There were Battletoads in this movie.
Did you see the Iron Giant?
What? I missed that.
The Iron Giant!
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to, do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it.